Committee will come to order. Thank you for everyone being here. Welcome to the Senate Committee on Redistricting and Elections. Our Sergeant at Arms today are for the Senate, John Enlow, Dwight Green, right here, Ed Kessler, in the back, Chris Moore, and Hal Roach, right there. Thank you all for being here today in this process. Members, we have on the agenda today, we have 3 bills, all representing submitted congressional redistricting plans. We will present, as we have with every other bill we do in committee, we will consider each bill individually. And if an appropriate motion is made, we will consider it favorable or unfavorable for review to the floor. Any questions about process? I wanted to get that out of the way before we begin. Seeing none, we will begin with Senate Bill 740, Congressional Redistricting Plan 21, CST 13. Senator Daniels will be recognized to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So this is going to be a little dry, but I'm going to just explain the map district by district, beginning with District 1. So Congressional District 1 is a coastal district. It's anchored in eastern North Carolina. It contains 15 whole counties. The 15 counties are Beaufort, Camden, Carteret, Chowan, Craven, Currituck, Dare, Gates, Hyde, Jones, Lenoir, Pamlico, Pasquotank, Perkins, and Terrell. And it has 2 partial counties, Onslow and Pitt. The district takes in the Outer Banks and most of the state's shoreline. Its shape is mostly dictated by the Atlantic Ocean. There are 0 municipalities split by the district's boundaries. VTDs are only split for the purpose of equalizing population to 0 deviation. This district keeps all of the finger counties in northeastern North Carolina together in the same district, as well as most of the counties that run along the Virginia border. Ms. Keisha Doby spoke at the Pasquotank public hearing and asked that the Northeast be maintained as a community of interest. That public input helped inform the construction of this district. Congressional District 2. Congressional District 2 is a district taking in most of rural northeastern North Carolina. It contains 16 whole counties: Bertie, Caswell, Edgecombe, Franklin, Granville, Greene, Halifax, Hertford, Martin, Nash, Northampton, Person, Vance, Warren, Washington, and Wilson. There are 2 split counties, Pitt and Wayne. There are 0 municipalities split by this district. There is 1 precinct split in Pitt County and 1 in Wayne County for the purpose of equalizing population. Congressional District 3. Congressional District 3 is a district based in southeastern North Carolina. It improves upon the compactness of the current district by keeping mostly rural counties closer to the coast in the same district as the remaining coastal counties. It contains 7 whole counties: Bladen, Brunswick, Columbus, Duplin, New Hanover, Pender, and Robeson, and 1 split county, Onslow. The district contains 0 split municipalities, and the only split VTD is required in order to equalize population. The district is a product of input from the New Hanover public hearing, where Barbara Garrow asked that the Cape Fear River Basin be kept in 1 congressional district. Herb Harton and Frank Williams, a Brunswick County Commissioner, asked that New Hanover and Brunswick counties be kept together, and Keith Graham asked that Bladen and Columbus counties be linked in a district. Congressional District 4. Congressional District 4 is a nearly perfect 4-county district south of where we are right now. It includes Cumberland, Harnett, Johnston, and Sampson counties, and a small portion of Wayne County to balance the population. These counties have similar geography, industry, and proximity to the population base in the region near Fayetteville and Raleigh. The district is extremely compact and contains 0 split municipalities. There is 1 split VTD in Harnett County and 1 in Wayne County. Both were split to equalize population between the districts. In an online public comment from Linda DeVore submitted on September 22, she asked for Cumberland, Harnett, and Sampson counties to be kept together in a congressional district By adding the population of Johnston and one precinct in Wayne County, this forms the ideal population for one compact district. Congressional District 5. Congressional District 5 is based entirely in Wake County. It is made up of Garner, Knightdale, Raleigh, Rollsville, Wake Forest, Wendell, and Zebulon. Raleigh and the other municipalities in Wake County share common interests. Many people live and work and commute between the different cities and towns in Wake County. There are no split municipalities in this district, and any VTDs that are split are done for the purpose of maintaining municipal boundaries or equalizing population. Congressional District 6. Congressional District 6 is made up of Durham County, Orange County, and the portion of Wake County that contains Apex, Cary, and Morrisville. This is a district that has existed in one shape or form for decades. As the population has grown in the area, it has been concentrated more specifically in the Triangle. It is home to some of the state's most prominent universities and hospitals. Along with Charlotte, it is the preeminent urban population base in our state. There are no split municipalities in the district, and any split VTDs are located in Wake County and split to equalize population or to keep municipalities whole. Congressional District 7 is made up of 4 whole counties and portions of 5 other counties. That includes all of Alamance, Chatham, Lee, and Randolph, and parts of Davidson, Guilford, Harnett, and Wake. The district runs from the Triangle west through the central Piedmont region. It's made up of the smaller cities and towns, as well as the rural areas that make up this area of the state. There's only one split municipality in the district, as it contains a very small portion of Greensboro. VTDs are only split for the purposes of equalizing population or keeping cities together. And I'll pause for a minute to get a drink of water. So we'll move on now to Congressional District 8. Congressional District 8 is made up of 8 whole counties: Anson, Hoke, Montgomery, Moore, Richmond, Scotland, Stanley, and Union, and part of another, Mecklenburg. The district takes in most of the counties considered to be in the Sandhills region. There are no split municipalities in the district, and one VTD is split in Mecklenburg County for the purposes of equalizing population. In an online public comment submitted on September 30th, Maurice Holland Jr., chair of the Moore County Democrat Party, asked for Sandhills counties, including Moore, Scotland, and Hoke, be kept together in a Sandhills district. By adding in Anson, Montgomery, and Richmond, we believe this district will be rooted in the Sandhills and represent that region of our state well. Congressional District 9 is a Charlotte district. Charlotte's population is too large for one congressional district, so it must be split. 97% of this district is made up of Charlotte, and 83% of the city is in the congressional district. VTDs are split only to equalize population and ensure that there are no other municipalities in the district. Congressional District 10 is made up of 3 whole counties: Cabarrus, Davie, and Rowan, as well as parts of Iredell, Davidson, and Guilford. This district takes in the counties and suburban and exurban areas that stretch between the 2 population centers of Charlotte and the Triad. There's only one split municipality, as mentioned before, in Greensboro. The district does contain all of High Point, as Martha Schaefer requested at the Forsyth public hearing that High Point be kept whole in one congressional district. VTDs are only split for the purpose of equalizing population. Congressional District 11 is based in the northwestern corner of North Carolina and is made up of 8 whole counties. Those whole counties are Alexander, Allegheny, Ashe, Caldwell, Stokes, Surrey, Rockingham, and Wilkes. The district also contains a portion of Guilford County and one precinct in Watauga County where the current incumbent lives. There is one split municipality, Greensboro, and more than 90% of Greensboro residents are kept together in this district. Congressional District 12 is made up of 4 whole counties and 1 partial county. It contains all of Catawba, Forsyth, Lincoln, and Yadkin counties, plus a portion of Iredell County. It is a compact district that connects the suburbs outside Charlotte to the area in and around Winston-Salem. It splits no municipalities, and it splits VTDs in Iredell County for the purpose of equalizing population. Congressional District 13 is made up of 7 whole counties. Burke, Cleveland, Gaston, McDowell, Rutherford, and Polk, and a portion of Mecklenburg County that contains the municipalities and towns to the west and north of Charlotte. In an online public comment submitted on September 24th, Mary Elizabeth Voss asked the towns of North Mecklenburg, including Cornelius, Huntersville, and Davidson, not be split and kept together in a district. The only municipality split in this district is Charlotte because it must be, and VTDs are split only to equalize population. Finally, Congressional District 14 is a western North Carolina district and takes in most of the mountain counties. In the westernmost tip of North Carolina, it contains 14 whole counties, including Avery, Buncombe, Cherokee, Clay, Graham, Haywood, Henderson, Jackson, Macon, Madison, Mitchell, Swain, Transylvania, and Yancey. It splits one VTD in Watauga County to avoid double bunking two incumbents. There are no municipalities split by the district. The district is a result of public input from C.J. Breland at the Jackson County public hearing, who asked that McDowell and Polk be removed from the current district, which is currently Congressional District 11, and that the district be drawn into Watauga County. Going through our criteria, all 14 of the districts are drawn to zero deviation or to one person less than ideal. There is no point contiguity used in this map. The map divides 11 counties solely to equalize population. There are districts wholly within Mecklenburg and Wake counties, which are the only two counties of sufficient size to contain a congressional district. Racial data was not used in drawing of this map. VTDs were only split when necessary for balancing population or keeping municipalities whole. There are 24 total split VTDs in the map. All of the districts are compact. Only 2 municipalities are split in the entire state. This map was not drawn using partisan data, and member residence was considered. Community considerations were made to try to keep communities together, particularly in terms of cities and towns. And Mr. Chair, that is the presentation of the map.
Thank you, Senator Daniel. Any questions or comments regarding the map? Senator Nickel.
Yeah, I have a question and want to use a display here to try to explain it. Here we've got what I see is what you started with, which is a map of North Carolina as a 50-50 state. 50% Democrats, 50% Republicans. We voted for Donald Trump for president and Roy Cooper for governor. And we can start and draw the maps any way we want here with these circles. So I've got 14 rows, 5 red, 5 blue. And we could start and we could gerrymander for competition. We could make every single one of these a 50-50. It would look a little weird, but we could do it. But what you've done here is pretty basic. You have drawn 6-4, and it's this great little pattern that I use, where I do 6, 4, 6, 4. And then I do the same pattern again with my blue marker. So you've got 6 red circles, 6 and 4 blue. So 60% Republican, and then we've got some Democrats left. So we do another one here, 80% Democrat, 20% Republican. Same pattern again, 6 and 4, 60-40, again, 60-40, again, 60-40. And again, the blue marker for the rest with our district here, 80% Democrat, 20% Republican. Last one here, 6-4, again, 6-4, and again, 6-4. And then we've got the blue marker again for this Democratic district. And then the last one, we've got 2 more left here. You know, this is, we'll call it a 6 Republican, 4 Democrat, but I really think G.K. Butterfield's district is a lot closer than this, but just in fairness, we'll call it 6-4, 6-4. So that gives us 10 to 11 for the red circles, and 3 to 4 for the blue circles. And that's what we've seen here. We're a 50-50 state. We heard the public comment. that gerrymandering is less popular than herpes in Durham. That was one of my favorites. But, you know, I think it's important as we look at this. This is what this map is. It's a 10 to 11, or sorry, a 10 to 4 or an 11 to 3, depending on that one area where GK is. And we've been through decades of litigation on this. 10 years ago, David Lewis was the lead Republican author when we drew maps. He's now a convicted felon. At the time, he said, I think electing Republicans is better than electing Democrats. So I drew this map to help foster what I think is better for the country. He then said, I propose that we draw the maps to give a partisan advantage to 10 Republicans and 3 Democrats, because I don't believe it would be possible to draw an 11 to 2 map. Now, Mr. Chairman, I know you are too smart to say something like that. And I'm not going to try to play gotcha here because I know you're briefed, and you're not going to say something as bad as that. But I do recall on the floor the last go-around when Senator Tillman was talking, I thought you were going to have a heart attack when he started talking about how Republicans were going to draw Republican maps. And he made his position very clear about that. And you know, it would be great if we could have an honest debate about this, but this is what we see here. And you don't need to say anything because this map speaks louder than words. You can't argue with the math, and it's right there in front of us. We've heard the public comments, we've heard the outside experts, and you can see in my diagram exactly what's going on. This is a map that robs 10.7 North Carolinians of any real choice at the ballot box. It's a map that guarantees that 10 or 11 Republicans will be elected in our 50-50 state. It doesn't pass the eye test. It doesn't pass the smell test. I wish I could make this committee understand why this is so wrong, why this is so wrong for every single voter in our state. And I wish we could sit down and have a private conversation about this with folks who would truly listen and truly find a compromise on this. And I wish we could have a competition at the ballot box for the best ideas. But you can't have a competition at the ballot box for the best ideas when you decide the outcome in advance. This is not a fair fight. You know, we could do 50-50 districts in every part of the state. And I think the most important question is very simple. With this whole process, you know, in this committee and on the floor of the Senate, is how greedy are you going to be with these maps? If you pass an 11 to 3 or a 10 to 4 map, I think you can guarantee action by the state Supreme Court on state constitutional grounds. We have heard what they said the last go around, and we fixed our maps. We came back and drew an 8 to 5 map. Now you're taking seats to make an 11 to 3 map or a 10 to 4. Control of the next Congress will be decided by just a few seats. And just by drawing the lines, we can decide who's going to be in control of the next Congress. So this is a big deal for my constituents, for all of our folks. And listen, I look at this like a father. When I talk to my kids who are still probably sleeping from their Halloween candy hangover, and I explain it to my 6-year-old daughter and my 9-year-old son, and there's only one way to describe it. It is cheating, plain and simple. You are cheating and robbing the voters of any real choice at the ballot box with this map. And so I thank the committee for listening to me here, and I just have one question, Senator Daniel. You just said you didn't consider partisan data at all. So how do you get a map that is an extreme partisan gerrymander that completely favors Republicans?
Senator Daniels, and I will remind the committee, as with all committee process, questions are directed to the chair, and the chair will direct those questions for an answer. Senator Daniels, if you'd like to respond.
Well, I think Senator Nickel, Senator Berger has probably said this best many times, both on the Senate floor and in public, that the population of our state is such that Democrats have congregated themselves in urban areas. So really the only way to accomplish what you're suggesting is to gerrymander. And I would just reiterate that the Senate plan splits 11 counties, only 2 municipalities in the whole state out of probably over 400. I don't know the exact number. And it splits 24 VTDs. So I would just challenge, I think those statistics are hard to beat.
Senator Perry. Any other questions or comments regarding the map? Senator Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I look at this map, I see something really obviously problematic with it, which is that you've targeted the 3 largest counties and split them each 3 ways. I'm wondering how, first, Mr. Chair, how you ranked the criteria that this committee adopted, and whether you took unnecessary splitting of counties into account, because when I look at this, these counties are split more than they need to be, and I'm wondering why you did it that way.
To briefly respond to the first question, as you are well aware, there is no ranking of the criteria that was placed in. The committee did not approve a ranking order of any of the criteria, so one was not in place. And the map before you splits 11 counties in the state, the lowest of any map submitted.
Follow up?
You're recognized for a question.
Thank you. I understand that they weren't ranked. We asked for there to be some ranking for some clarification, but I will just state that I think splitting these 3 counties 3 times is unnecessary and, to me, a clear indication of an intent to give one party a partisan advantage. But just to be a little more specific, I noticed that when the map was presented, there were mentions of citizen input to justify many of the districts. There was no mention of any citizen input to justify putting part of Mecklenburg County with what you called the Sandhills District. I was at all the hearings. I reviewed many of the online public comments. I saw absolutely 0 requests for part of Mecklenburg to be added to this more rural Sandhills District made up of Union, Anson, Richmond, Scotland, Hoke, et cetera. I guess my question to the chair is are you aware of any input from folks in Mecklenburg requesting to be spread out so far to the east in these rural counties?
I'm not aware of specific input for many decisions made within the map, but thank you for your comments.
Okay, can I ask another question?
You're recognized for another question.
Thank you. Again, a similar question. I was at all the hearings, and I actually know the person that you mentioned to justify what you did to the northern and northwestern part of Mecklenburg County, which is to split the county again into a 3rd piece and put us, that's where I happen to live, so I'll say us, put us in this purple district that goes very far to the west, also with a rural part of the state. You mentioned Mary Elizabeth Voss. I know Liz Voss. She did ask that North Mecklenburg be kept together, but she never said, please put us with a rural county to the west with people we have very little in common with to justify a congressional district, perhaps for Speaker Moore. I know she didn't say that. What she wants is what we all want in Mecklenburg County, and I would say everyone in this state wants, is to stay with our communities of interest. North Mecklenburg towns live in Mecklenburg County, and we deserve to have a congressional district that honors that. And so I'm asking if you would like to give any other reason other than the one you mentioned about what Liz Voss said, because that doesn't justify this. Is there any other way to justify putting a 3rd part of Mecklenburg County in with yet another rural area district?
Senator, I will say that it is obvious that Charlotte and Mecklenburg County is too large for a district. And I'm sorry for your comments that the people outside of that district don't want to be with anybody around them.
It's not what I said.
Do you have another question?
Not right now.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Senator Blue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to get a handle on looking at what you've drawn, but Senator Daniel indicated that Raleigh and other municipalities in Wake County shared a common interest. Is that correct? A question to Senator Daniel.
Senator Daniel, would you like to respond?
Senator Blue, can you restate your question?
I'd be happy to. You commented that
Reference
Raleigh
by
and
district number would be helpful.
well, your comment was that Raleigh and other municipalities in Wake County shared a common interest, and I'm talking about, let's see how many of them. Talking about District 5, District 6, and District 7. And
Senator Blue, I believe we're going to try to get a larger version up on of where you're talking about in Wake County.
okay, I think I got the same map that I'm looking. Yeah, I'm talking about District 5, District 6, and District 7 on the map. It's S740 that was on my desk. I guess that's the same as the one you have up. You had commented that the citizens of Wake County, Raleigh and the citizens of Wake County and the municipalities shared a common interest.
That's correct.
Yeah. Why don't the remaining municipalities in Wake County share a common interest?
I mean, they probably do, Senator Blue, but, you know, a congressional district can only be 700 and some thousand people, and you can't fit, you know, every municipality in Wake County into one district.
Yep. Follow up.
Follow up?
Yeah, I was just trying to sort out your justification for the whole district, which you have no choice in. You had to create one, and anyone that you created was going to involve some of the municipalities in Wake County. There are 11 of them, by the way. And so if, in fact, that is true, that the municipalities of Wake County, that is the remaining 400,000 plus people, shared a common interest, was there any effort made to keep them together because they share a common interest? With each other, not necessarily with the whole district that you've created.
Senator Blue, my understanding is that the Congressional District 5, you said there's 11 municipalities in the county. 8 of those are entirely contained in Congressional District 5, and then the remaining 3 were placed in Congressional District 6. So I think the answer is, without knowing the numbers off the top of my head, that, you know, we put as many as we could population-wise into one district, and then the remaining 3 we put all together in a separate district.
Another question. If I can call your attention to the map,
Recognized.
are you saying that none of the yellow portion in Wake County, at the bottom of Wake County, there at the southwest 90-degree angle that comes together there at Wake County, are you saying none of those are in a municipality? Is Fuquay not down there?
I'm not sure. Apex, Cary, and Morrisville are in 6, and I'm not sure where Fuquay would make 12 then, because I've already counted 11.
Fuquay, Holly Springs?
So there's more than 11.
Okay, got too many. We only got 11. 10 plus the county got
I didn't know
11
the
governments.
small ones. I didn't know.
Okay. Another question, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Was the same observation made about Guilford County? That Guilford County, the citizens of High Point and Greensboro share a common interest. Is that correct? Based on your reasoning of Wake County's municipalities and the city of Raleigh.
Senator Dan.
I don't know what those folks would say. High Point's a furniture town, and Greensboro is probably a textile town.
Wait, I'll talk on that one. I'll talk on that one.
Let me ask him another question, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
You're recognized for another question.
What, I grew up and took mandatory North Carolina geography in the 8th grade. It's been a while, but I remember a lot of it. What counties do you consider the Sandhill counties, and where do you consider the anchor of the Sandhills, based on your 8th grade geography course?
I don't know that I can answer that question, Senator Blue.
If I could comment.
Recognized for a comment.
Yeah, wasn't Cumberland County an essential county that you learned in the 8th grade was the anchor of the Sandhills?
I don't recall.
And one other question in that regard. Was Union County a Sandhills county? Based on how the Sandhills got their name in sort of prehistoric geography and the way the ocean deposited sand in that area of the state?
Just can't remember my 8th grade history, Senator Blue.
Okay, let me ask one other one related to this, and I'll move
I
on.
would say that, I mean, I think sometimes we split hairs over, you know, communities of interest. I think, you know, we're all Americans, we're all North Carolinians, and I think we're sometimes making too much of a, I shouldn't be with the county next door to me because we're different, you know. I mean, we're all North Carolinians, and we travel to shop in the same places with our next door neighbor counties. And
Let me ask you this then, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
You're recognized.
You indicated that keeping municipalities whole was a priority.
it was,
High Point is in 4 counties. Was it kept whole?
My understanding is High Point was kept whole, and the only two municipalities that were split were Greensboro and Charlotte.
So, Senator Blue, I will clarify that county line splitting municipalities is not a municipal split. It is, as the system reads it, it would be a municipality within a county, whether that is split is how the system would determine. We also, for clarification purposes, a split that was zero population is not a split.
So I'm not sure if I answered your question right then or not, Senator Blue.
Make a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Recognized for a comment.
Yeah, I point that out because we go through great lengths to not say what is obvious. But the lawyers in here know darn well, and I don't know who the lawyers are who is advising anybody, that there's not always direct evidence from the standpoint of somebody saying something is something. Circumstantial evidence is just as good as direct evidence to prove a point, prove intent, and all of those kinds of things. And I think that what we fail to realize is that the kind of illustration that Senator Wiley just made, every mathematician in this state would agree that that's what the mathematics says. And at least I'm one who still believes in the science and in mathematics. And if the mathematics says it, I'm enough of an adherent to scientific proof and theory that I believe it's got to be so until you disprove it. And I haven't seen any proofs, hypotheticals that would disprove that. And so I'm saying that the proof of what is behind drawing this map is obvious to anybody who takes a serious look at it. And I, too, am concerned that we went through this exercise 2 years ago, and we came through it victorious. Not that it was everybody got what they wanted. An 8-5 split is not a 50-50 split. But the court blessed that split, and here we are, 2 years later, just merely 2 years later, spitting in their face, saying that 8-5 was what we did because you made us do it, but we really wanted 11-3. And that does not make common sense to me, and I'm a simple guy. And common sense is what I try to use to determine what really ought to happen, informed by my basic belief on what I learned in Sunday school when I was 5 or 6 years old. And so I'm trying to figure out what is the commonsensical basis of taking 450,000 leftover people in Wake County, 450,000 leftover people in Mecklenburg County, and then all of the 500,000 people in Guilford County, treating them differently than you're treating every other county in the state. The magic running through these three counties is you are treating counties that still have 400,000+ people to contribute to the redistricting effort differently than you're treating every other county in the state. And you pointed out that the Democratic concentration is in urban areas. And it's not coincidence that it's only in the urban areas that you subject these counties to that kind of treatment. And I'm saying that common sense would inform me if I were a judge, which I never had the desire to be, but it would inform me that you got something else at work here rather than the comments that you made about who wanted districts run in a certain way. And I'm really hoping that we can look seriously at redistricting this state in a way that does not offend the basic fairness of the process, offend people all across the state, but so that you can retain some aspect of legislators playing a role in this process. You know, I happen to believe in neutrals doing this because of the experiences I've had over the years. But this kind of radical, extreme effort simply takes us out of the process. And I think that you're as convinced as I am that it's not going to stand, so why don't we fix it right while we have an opportunity to do it and not be governed by what interests outside of North Carolina tell us we ought to do in handling North Carolina business.
Thank you for your comments. Next, I have Senator Perry, then Senator Lowe. and Senator Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to share some comments and thoughts, and I heard my colleague mention common sense approach. He also asked or mentioned he didn't know how many lawyers were involved, but I know how many lawyers are involved, in my opinion. And no offense meant to my colleagues in the room, but I'll say it's too many, and entirely too many. Too many attorneys up here that pre-plan every conversation that goes on in any committee we go to, especially this one. And it seems to have lost the flavor of the citizen lawmaker. But I did have a question. I was looking at the visual aid that Senator Nickel provided, and I was trying to figure out which one of those represented the congressional district that he's running for. And when I was looking at the map, it hit me in these metropolitan areas when the population's over 700,000, they're going to be split. They have to be. But not only do they have to be split because of population, but those places are going to have 3 members of Congress representing them. That's a lot more horsepower to advocate for things and bring things back for an area. And I probably see it that way because coming from a rural area where we lose population and districts get bigger, it feels like we always have less representation. So I look at that and I think there's no way not to do it. And it's actually beneficial to them to have additional members of Congress advocating for that area. Now, that's not a legal argument that lawyers are going to make. That's nothing salacious or interesting or headline grabbing for most, but it is the common sense view of just an average non-lawyer citizen lawmaker. Thank you.
Senator Lowe.
Common citizen. I'm just a country preacher from a tobacco town. And when I look at this map, I gotta say it, and I see Winston-Salem, I see Greensboro, I see High Point. I think we have more in common than most on this map. And to split us up like this, I can't make sense of it. And I really want to understand it because when I see Forsyth County swinging around and we're connecting to Lincoln, I mean, what in the hell do we have to do with Lincoln? It doesn't make sense to me. And I want to understand this, but I don't get it. And I know that there's a lot of lawyers here, mathematicians and Indian chiefs and all kinds of stuff here, and people that are far smarter than me. But when I look at what has been going on in this community that I live in for the last 30 years, as it relates to industry, as it relates to communities of interest, and I see the blatant legislative process that pulls this apart. And you can do it, you got the votes. You've heard me say this before. But it just, when I talk to the citizens in my community, I don't hear any of them jumping up and down about this. And I gotta say something. Now, some of you I've talked to about all kinds of things, and some things we agree on, and some things we don't agree on, and then we go out and eat together. But when I look at this, and when I look at Guilford and Forsyth, that is a natural to be together. It's just a natural progression and order of things. So I really want to understand the rationale for discombobulating. Maybe that's a good word. This, help me.
Senator Daniels, any comments?
I think, we followed the criteria to the best we could, and we we're able to only split 11 counties and 2 municipalities in the whole state.
Senator Davis. Do you have any
I
follow-up?
mean, you know, my brother's a lawyer.
Follow-up, Senator Lowe?
Follow it. My brother is a lawyer. And there are some conversations I've come to grips with that are useless to have with him. And it seems like we're getting to that point, but you can't give me a real answer. I know there is one. I may not know it. But I know there is a real answer, and the answer you gave me is not it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Senator Davis.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I guess in listening to all these comments, I'll start by just making sure everyone knows I'm not an attorney either. I come from I'm a small town country boy. But one thing that is important to me is the people, their voices in this process, and not just this process, but in all processes. Everything that, we engage in, whether it's the good, whether it's the bad, the ugly, just taking the time to listen to the residents of the state. So I want to first, actually, if I could change the tone just a second, and thank you for making adjustments along the way, because I know there was concerns. I continue to hear concerns along the way about the public hearings, making sure that there were enough before the map was released, and then making certain there was an opportunity to comment after then the map was released. And I know efforts were made then to do so. Now, I continue to hear along the way, there were still concerns about things like, individuals wanting to comment, but when they went in, it was locked out and they couldn't get in and things like that. But I do appreciate those comments, or at least what efforts were made, even though, again, I continue to hear the desire for more. But my question then is, I was listening to Senator Daniel today, and I'm just curious in this process, what was the total number of individuals that actually made comments and those that came in on the public portal?
Senator Davis, I'm not sure that anyone has that information, a tally in front of them at this point, but I'm confident staff can get you that report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And follow up?
Follow up?
Okay. I'm just curious because I know specific names. I guess some members know who they were. I don't know necessarily all the names that were mentioned in sharing the input that was made and considered in this map. Do we, and I'm just curious, have kind of a total number that were used that went into this specific map that we pulled from wherever the portal, from comments that were made? Because obviously, I'm assuming you reviewed it in order to incorporate some of those names.
So, from what I received from staff, it says the total online comments to date are 4,037.
4,037. Okay. And just going back to the question I had before that, and thank you for that. Based on, there were names that were shared today, do we have any feel for how this map aligns with those comments? Those over 4,037 plus?
I don't think we know any statistics about that.
I think that even whether those 4,000 comments have relation directly to the map is sometimes in question. Some more seem to be about the process or the others that are going, but do we have a tally of how many made an impression on the map drawers and others, and was something they utilized? I don't know that that even exists.
Okay. I was just curious. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else who's not spoken yet who'd like to be recognized? If not, I'll go back to the repeats. Okay. Senator Nichol is then recognized for a second time.
Thank you. And I am a lawyer, and I'm proud to be one because I understand how our system of government works and how the court system works. And I think this map is begging for court action. And when the courts have gotten involved, we've seen much better outcomes that give voters a real choice at the ballot box. My question, though, is about Section 10 of the North Carolina Constitution, and it states, "All elections shall be free." Now, we had a unanimous ruling by a 3-judge panel in 2019, and they said, "It is not the free will of the people that is fairly ascertained through extreme partisan gerrymandering. Rather, it is the carefully crafted will of the map drawer that predominates." So my question is in 2 parts. Number 1, how do you define an extreme partisan gerrymander? And number 2, is a map that elects 71% or to 79% of members of one political party to the delegation of Washington an extreme partisan gerrymander?
Senator Nichol, I will merely respond. I'm not going to give a definition for a term the court came up with that's coming in that the legislature did not. But I will say that a free election, there would be no different in a map orchestrated or designed to elect 7 individuals, that if it doesn't have variance, it doesn't have variance. That's coming in for what to occur. And so I think the maps that I've seen elsewhere that we'll discuss later that are clearly drawn for partisan reasons, that's coming in. I will say that we have not looked at any partisan data in drawing this map, nor have we looked at racial data as consistent with the criteria of the committee, and the results are as they are.
Follow-up?
So, you want to respond to the question? Okay. Senator Nichols recognized.
So getting rid of lawyer terms, is a map that elects 79% Republicans a fair map?
A map that predetermines the outcomes based on partisan data would be an issue that inconsistent with the criteria of this committee.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Newton.
for the reasons articulated by Senator Daniel, I'd like to move for a favorable report on Senate Bill 740.
We have a motion for a favorable report. Last chance, any comments from the committee?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Blue.
how can you entertain a motion for a favorable report if you've adopted this bill and be fair to the other map makers who have bills that are before this committee on the same subject?
Senator Blue is consistent with all the processes of the committee as I have been here. They consider one bill at a time. There is no limitations of what bills can receive a favorable or unfavorable report, and all bills from committee are referred to the floor with either a favorable or unfavorable report.
Follow-up.
Follow-up.
So you're telling me that this committee can pass out 3 bills on the very same subject, bills conflicting with each other?
As I'm sure you're aware, the arbiter of law is the passage of both chambers for and what a particular chamber, or both chambers for that matter, can consider are not limited, and that has been consistent in the 11 years that I've been here. I've discussed many bills with the House that we have had differences of opinion on the passage of the bills, and that's why we have a conference committee process as well.
Follow-up.
Follow-up?
There is no conference committee process in the Senate with competing bills, unless I missed something, right?
Right,
And
there is-
so once we've passed something out of a committee, that is the official position of the committee. And what I'm asking is, how can we then conflict it, or how can we then consider anything else unless it's an amendment to the bill that we're discussing?
So, Senator Blue, there is no process for the committee to consider 2 things simultaneously.
Okay.
That is not in our process. So, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Senator Newton has moved
Mr.
for a
Chair?
favor. Senator Marcus,
A question, please.
you're recognized for a question.
One topic we haven't talked is the application of the Voting Rights Act to this map. I asked when we met earlier that this committee, before we even set county clusters, and certainly before we vote on a map, that we do a racial polarized voting study. At that time, the chair informed me that there was no intention to do that, at least at that time. I'd like to ask whether that research has been done and in any way is reflected in this map that we're about to vote on.
No studies have been done by this committee. No evidence of racially polarized voting has been submitted to this committee for consideration, and racial data was not used in the creation of these maps. Okay. Seeing no other comments, Senator Newton has moved for a favorable report to Senate Bill 740. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no?
No.
The ayes have it. Senate Bill 740 received a favorable report and will be referred to the floor. Next bill we have up on the calendar, Senate Bill 737, Congressional Redistricting Plan 2021, CCH 6, Senator Clark.
The packets are being distributed.
And the packets are being distributed. We did hold those to avoid confusion so that members can have one packet in front of them.
And Mr. Chair, we do have an amendment to this one that's in the report, but why the Senate will.
Yeah, Senator Clark, Senator, is it your intent to amend it before discussion?
Well, I'll do it as part of my.
Okay. So not at the beginning.
Mr. Chair, would you like to go ahead and pass out the hard copies associated with the amendment?
Senator Clark, would you like them to have hard copies of the amendment?
Sure, please go ahead and pass out.
Staff will now begin at the Senator Clark's request. We will pass out copies of the amendment as well. We will consider the bill as is until the amendment is submitted. Members, as I am reading what is before me, the bill we are considering right now, the map is labeled Senate Bill 738 First Edition. What is being passed out at this point, I'm understanding will be the proposed amendment from Senator Clark, that's just labeled as, the map is labeled as CCG 7. The bill text is attached to both maps. Seems that does everyone have a copy, every member of the committee have a copy of both? Yes, okay. Recognizing that, Senator Clark is recognized for his explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And this is, hold on. I have,
Mr. Chair, I think the members may have gotten
Yeah.
the next bill
Yeah.
on the first edition.
so we'll hold again while we pass out the bill. 738 is Senator Chaudhry's bill that's coming in. What you will need is 737 First Edition. That's 738 again. Sorry, Senator Clark. You hit the-
No problem. We're not going anywhere.
730.
I hear you.
again. Does everyone have in front of them Senate Bill 737, first edition? As the map is labeled. Okay. If everyone has it, we will go ahead and allow Senator Clark to begin his process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, the bill under consideration has the plan CCH6, and I'm going to recommend that we amend that with another plan. But I did not want you to think I'm trying to hoodwink you or anything, so I want to explain how the maps differ. So if you look at the one on the screen or in your hand, we'll start with CCH6. If you look in the western part of the state, I guess I shouldn't move away from the microphone. If you look at the western part of the state, you'll see a configuration for that most western district, which I refer to as a type pack, okay? And you can understand why we would call it that. Now, in the bill submitted by the chairs, they use what I call a western slant, which is shown there. So what I decided to do is take that western slant, and it included in the bill that I will be putting forth as an amendment, okay? And one of the reasons I did that was because at the public hearings, one of the individuals speaking lamented the fact that Watauga was not included in the traditional Congressional District 11. So I decided I would make that change by incorporating the majority's plan with regard to that particular district into mine, okay? Another change that is made, I would like to direct your attention to Wake County. And you can see the configuration of Wake County that I had there initially. Well, what I decided to do is modify that. As you see here, it goes further to the south, that particular district that is embedded wholly within Wake County. Essentially what I've done is I've gone to Senator Chaudhry's bill, and I've snatched his version of Wake County from him and incorporated it into this plan. And one other minor change that's not necessarily visible in this particular map here is I changed the boundary just a little bit that separates the east from the west by saving a split VTD. In other words, I just reduced the split VTDs by 1. And so that being said, Mr. Chairman, I would like to amend the bill with the plan that has CCG-7.
Senator Clark, as a request that has come to the chairman, as we have not seen this until now, I think it is appropriate before we'll consider the amendment as proposed before the committee, but before we begin discussions and vote on the amendment, we're going to let the committee stand in recess for about, we'll say 20 minutes to review this map, allow us to continue as many of the members of the committee are seeing this for the first time now. So we'll pick that up in just a moment, and the committee will stand in recess until, let's see, 10:25. So we're at recess. Committee will come back to order. Where we left out, we had a motion on the floor to amend the bill in whole with CCG 7, the packet that you have. The chairs have decided for their consideration that they would support the amendment of the bill on the basis that Senator Clark can submit a bill to be considered by the committee, but would do so as to without comment as to whether the amendment is more consistent with our criteria or others, as Senator Clark could have just submitted this as his bill. So I'll go ahead and take all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill as amended, CCG 7, is before the committee.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Okay. That being said, let's see, we're now on CCG 7. That is the map that is under consideration before the committee here. And one thing you think about when you're doing a map is, what are my objectives? And are there things that I'm trying to make sure that don't perpetuate themselves, or are there things that I want to include in the map going forward? And I want to talk about those things because one of the things that was mentioned by one of the members, not members, by one of the individuals who came to the last public hearing, she said, there's no context here. I don't understand where this map came from or why y'all made the map the way you did. So for me, the best thing to do, I believe, is to first start from our current congressional maps, because there are things in that map that I thought were egregious that I did not want to continue on into the map that is before you now. All righty, so that'll just take a couple of seconds. So first of all, this is our current congressional plan. And if you look at it, you see in the center near Mecklenburg County, there's a circle there. From the center of Mecklenburg County out to that circle is a distance of about 20 miles. Within that tight radius there, we have 4 congressional representatives there. Also, you see some black dashed lines that end in balls that extend far out into North Carolina. And if you follow the trajectory of those dashed lines back into that circle, you see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 congressional districts that terminate far ends of the state that also have points of contiguity within Mecklenburg County. And to me, something's wrong with that. And also, if you do the counting and count the number of districts that are rooted in the west versus in the east based on population, you'll see that we have 8, excuse me, I believe it's 7 in the west and only 5 in the east, or 8, 5, excuse me. And I think something's wrong with that. I think the common person out there would think, well, we ought to have a balance there, but we don't have that. And so one of the things I wanted to do moving forward in the plan that I have before you today is make sure that in the east and west we have 7 districts in each based on a split of the population. And so that brings us to this diagram here. The area in the green represents the west. The area in pink represents the east. And as you can see, the actual populations are quite similar. As a matter of fact, the deviation between the two, there's a -1 +1 deviation on having equal populations in the west and equal populations in the east. And as you'll see in the 7-7 plan, as I've been calling it, there will be 7 districts in the west, 7 districts in the east. No district in the west shall cross over to the east, and no district in the east shall cross over to the west. I know that was not a criteria of the committee, but it was a self-imposed criteria that I placed upon myself. Because, by the way, in case you're wondering, I do comply with all of the committee criteria. But the thing I understand, and I suspect most folks understand, is that in addition to the criteria that we guide ourselves by as a committee, we also have other objectives when we sit down and do a plan, whether it's a legislative plan, congressional plan. And our folks who've come to the hearings and our folks back home, they want transparency. They want to understand why it is that we did what we did. And I'm going to try my best to explain why I did what I did. And in part of what I did is because of the constraint I imposed upon myself to bring about an issue of fairness I believe most citizens in North Carolina would agree to. If we split the population in half, we ought to have 7 congressional districts in the east and 7 in the west. And in addition to that, I believe that every major geocultural region in the state of North Carolina should have a congressional district rooted within. This particular diagram is a three-dimensional diagram that gives a feeling for the population densities in the various major geographical regions across North Carolina. I've circled them in either black or I've circled them, one, in red. If we start in the west, we see that the western region of the state has a congressional district rooted therein. The northwest does. The Triad does. The Charlotte metropolitan region, greater metropolitan region, has one. Actually, they have about 3 or 4. I lose count. And then you have the triangle up there. It does. The northeast, the coast, and the southeast. But who's missing one? The Sandhills. And by the way, before I forget, my friends across the aisle mentioned that Maurice Holland indicated in his written comments that he wanted a Sandhills district. Yes, indeed he does. As a matter of fact, I know Maurice. He's the chair of the Democratic Party in Moore County, and he showed up for our last public hearing and specifically endorsed CBK4, which contained the construct and the plan that I'm presenting to you today as his preferred choice for a Sandhills district. So that was another one of the self-imposed constraints or objectives I had with regard to a map. Okay. So to summarize, I have my points here. In addition to our criteria, my objective for a congressional plan for North Carolina to have equal representation in the east and west, to have districts that are rooted in each major geocultural region in the state, and I can't read from here, but I know it says another thing is to not split any county more than one time, which is what we did in our previous congressional plan. We did not split a single county more than once. As a matter of fact, I made that as a recommendation for the committee, but it was rejected. But the reason I did that, because I've been reviewing a lot of maps over the past year. You know, I have a lot of enthusiasts out there doing their own maps, and people really like doing maps. But one thing that started to become apparent to me is that the gateway to gerrymandering is to go in and split a municipality more than one time. So I was not shocked, I fully expected it, when I saw the map that was produced by the folks across the aisle, when I saw 3 of the large urban counties with 2 splits, which made 3 pieces. And I said, okay, they're exercising that gateway to gerrymandering. And I know what they say about the number of splits, but we'll talk more about that later. Don't want to get off track here. Okay, so in my case, I did not split any county more than once. Okay. Okay, so that being said, clearly I'm influenced by other things. Like I said, I've seen a lot of maps. But probably the 3 most important maps that I took into consideration as I embarked on the effort to do a congressional plan for the state of North Carolina are the 3 that we'll go over now. The first being the North Carolina Prosperity Zones. If you look up there, you see the state of North Carolina. As a matter of fact, this was done early in the McCrory administration when these zones were established. We have a western region, and surprisingly and not surprisingly, that looks like a tight, packed construction for a western district in the state of North Carolina. And then you see the northeastern region up there. Probably looks similar to many of us. Then you have the Triad region, the north central region, the northeast region, southeastern, and you have the Sandhills. Now, clearly, all those counties you see there are not going to fit in Sandhills. Senator Blue already gave us a geography lesson on the ones that make up essentially the central core of the Sandhill regions, which are the ones that were adopted in the plan that I'm going to use. But also, I would like to draw your attention to over in the Charlotte metropolitan statistical area, you see that gray mass over there. Another one of my objectives was to try to constrain districts to that area to the greatest extent possible, because clearly they have interests in common in that area. So another map. This is another map generated by State of North Carolina, Department of Health and Human Services for public health preparedness and response. If you look on the western side, you see something similar. You see a grouping of counties along the western border. And you also see that configuration in the Charlotte metropolitan area. I think one difference is the Catawba has been added. So I use that to guide my approach as well. Third map, North Carolina Appalachian Regional Commission counties. I think there you have about 29 counties that are part of that commission. As a matter of fact, every single one of those counties, save one, except Davie, form what you might call a 2 congressional district cluster, which hold the 2 western districts that are in the plan that I put forward. I don't think anyone would doubt that there's a lot of community of interest within that group. Okay. So that being said, that brings us back to the CCG7 plan. Okay? And I included the white line in there, which represents the boundary between the east and west. So, when you're looking at that blank slate of North Carolina, it's like, well, where do I start? Where do I start? Unlike, I guess about 4 bienniums ago, when I sat down in the basement of one of the buildings here with one of the staffers with Maptitude and told her I wanted to practice trying to figure out how to do a congressional plan, and she asked me where I wanted to start, and I looked at it, and I didn't have a clue. But I had a clue this time. And you have to sort of think, well, what do the citizens of North Carolina want? What do they want? Well, first of all, they want us to fully comply with the criteria, which in part says if you have a county that has substantial population in which a complete congressional district can be embedded, we must do that. So I said, okay, well, I guess I better go ahead and take care of Mecklenburg County and Wake County. So under our current congressional district plan, we resolved that by essentially pushing the population up against the northern border in Mecklenburg County and taking the balance from the south and pushing that into another district. So I chose to do that in this plan. And I tried to the extent possible, to the best of my abilities anyway, to avoid splitting municipalities in that process. So then I head on over to Wake County. Now, in our current congressional plan, the opposite is done. The population is pushed down to the south, and it's the northern portion of Wake County that serves as an outlet into other districts. I chose not to take that route. I chose instead to push it up to the north and make the outlet the southern portion. So you might ask, well, why did he do that? Oh, boy. Let me back up here. All right, can someone help me out? One of the tech people put it back in the proper mode. So we can see. Okay. I think I hit the wrong. You may want to stay there until I get going again. I think I hit the wrong button on here. Try to back up. See. Okay, that does it. Okay. Okay, so one thing I knew that was going to happen is if you look in the district labeled 7, we had that boundary constraint there. I knew I was going to have to come across the top and initially collect the first 3 counties and try to build up to the required population. But I did a full stop at Granville County. So why did I do a full stop at Granville County? Because that's going to serve as the basis for what we consider now to be a VRA district, currently numbered Congressional District 1, Congressman Butterfield's district. And I'll talk more about that later. But I just wanted you to know why I did that full stop. Okay? I was going to do that full stop. But so I'll come back to that later. So let's move back to the west. So we have Mecklenburg County taken care of. And I want to take care of another area out west. I think you may appreciate this, Senator Lowe. A lot of folks at those public hearings said that they wanted to keep Congressional District 6, as we currently call it, pretty much intact. And as a matter of fact, the first iteration of the map I did exactly that, and it pretty much looked like the one we had today. I just expanded it a little bit in order to make sure it got up to the ideal population. But then during the public hearings, one of the speakers indicated that Kernersville should be part of Congressional District 6, and they shouldn't be connected to the west. So I said, well, I guess I better go in and make that fix. And also while I was at it, I decided to fix Walkertown too and make it part of that district. And as a result, it became somewhat more compact, and also it helped me eliminate 2 municipal districts. I began to realize that that was a premium criteria for some around here. So I eliminated 2 split municipalities and tightened it up, gave it a much cleaner appearance, and retained it as the folks in that region that asked that we do through the portal and through public comment at hearings. So now in the west, I have Mecklenburg taken care of, and I have Congressional District 6, now 12 taken care of. So where do I go from there? I said, well, okay, let me go ahead and take care of the western part of the state. And as you know, now I started out with the tight pack configuration, but I thought Senator Heiss-Daniels' version was better, so I adopted the western slant variation, which you see here, which necessitated a change to the District 14 up there. Okay, so now in this version, it runs all the way from Polk County up to, I can't see my glasses without my glasses. Yeah, up to Stokes County. But remember, those group of counties in those most western districts, all the same counties that are in that ARC commission, save one, that being David County. Okay. So then I said, okay, I got that squared away. Maybe it's time to move east from Mecklenburg County. Now remember, we're going to be constrained by that east-west boundary because we want to make sure we have 7 districts in the west and 7 in the east. So I begin heading out, and I go from Mecklenburg County to Union, then Anson, then it's time for a full stop. Then I run up and I capture a little bit there. Let's see, Richmond, then Montgomery, and back to Stanley, where I still don't have enough population. And then I group in some of the southern portion of Cabarrus County. And that provides a congressional district that lies pretty much almost completely encased with that eastern portion of the Greater Charlotte metropolitan statistical area that we talked about previously. Okay. Then from there, you can move northward to the next one. I take the rest of Cabarrus County, and I group that with Rowan, Davie, and then head on out to the west until I get to, let's see, what do we got over there, Randolph, and that forms another district. And remember, it couldn't go any further because we have Congressional 6 already. It's taken that territory up the northward. Yet, in whole, for the most part, it too is encased within that Greater Charlotte metropolitan statistical area in the region that we saw in the previous maps that impacted the way I was going to approach this process. So if we go to the eastern side, we see that we have another component of that, which includes the counties you see them there, Iredell, Catawba, Lincoln, Gaston, and Cleveland. And I haven't mentioned it before, but since it's on my mind, and by the way, this map doesn't double bunk a single incumbent. So all the ones that are out there, they can feel safe. No double bunking of a single incumbent in this plan. But then that pretty much takes care of the West. I've achieved half of my objectives so far. We have 7 districts in the West. All of them are compact within major geographical regions in the state. All of them are consistent with regions that we have established before within the states, whether it be the economic regions, whether it be part of the ARC, et cetera. There's method to the madness, if you want to call it madness. So let's head back to these. I'll start up at 7. As I indicated before, I had to come across the top there, pulled in the first 3 counties, and hit the full stop at Granville. So then I had to go grab the 3 counties beneath. And then when I got to Durham, of course, it was like population overload. So I'm going to have to reduce some of the population, and I decided to take that out of Durham. So I took that southeastern corner out of Durham and said, well, that will be part of the district that would lie beneath it, okay, which also somewhat adjoins the southern White County But remember, for transparency, I also told you that one of my objectives was going to be to establish a congressional district that was rooted in the only region that does not have one at this point, and that was the Sandhills. Yes, the citizens did ask for this. As a matter of fact, for those of you who were at the Cumberland County public hearing, 40% of the people that spoke requested a Sandhills district that contained these counties. And among the people there were some people from Moore County. There were also people from Robinson County. As a matter of fact, when I went to the public hearing in Robinson County, about 30% of those people spoke in favor of a Sandhills district comprising these counties. Yeah. And Maurice Holland was one of the people that said they liked this version. But it's more than about the Sandhills, you know? This region is home to a major influence in this state that we call Fort Bragg. I know one of my fellow members, good senator, linked a community of interest, if you will, with Fort Bragg regarding some 3 other counties. But let me tell you something. Probably unbeknownst to many folks, that when they think of Fort Bragg, they just think of the installation itself. But the majority of the Fort Bragg training area lies within the northern portion of Polk County. Spans across the entire tier of Polk County. And also, in that confluence of counties down there, where you have Moore County, you have Hope County, you have Scotland County and Richmond County, that little knob, we have a place called Fort McCall. Military installation, somewhat linked to Fort Bragg, where they train Special Forces troops. Has an impact on them all. If you run down the southern border of Moore County there, the lower third or lower quarter, if you will, that whole area has been designated in their land use plan as a military impact area. So when I came into that, I had those things in mind. So, of course, took Richmond. We grabbed what I considered the belt of the Sandhills down there. Then we added Robinson County and then Moore County in there. But that still wasn't enough population. So the question becomes, well, do I head over to Bladen County? Or maybe Sampson County? Or maybe up to Harnett County? I decided to go up to Harnett County. And I'll explain why. But before I do that, I want to mention something else. In my initial version, the CBK4, inadvertently, I guess I had gone up too high, and I took a precinct that inadvertently split Lillington in half. And one of the speakers at the last public hearing lamented that she did not appreciate someone putting a map out there that split Lillington that way. So I wasn't sure that I was the one who did that. But I went back and looked at my map, and lo and behold, oops, ouch, it was me. So I said, well, let me take that precinct and put it up there in the 6 and take it out of 4. Now, I didn't have any political data. Didn't need any. Been looking at these maps a long time. But I do know that that precinct I popped up to 4 and out of the Sandhills is a Democratic-leaning VTD. I just know that. I expect you guys in your areas know how various precincts trend. You just know. It's in your area, you just know. And therefore, ended up getting swapped out for a precinct that was more Republican-leaning, got added into the Sandhills. But that's okay. That's okay. Because my interest is not trying to establish a map that leans Republican or leans Democrat. My total objective from beginning to end was to develop a map that was fair. Fair in the east-west distribution, fair in the distribution of seats into the major geopolitical regions. Sandhills. I don't know whether that a reporter asked me, is that going to be a Republican district, Democratic district? I don't know. I don't know. But you know what? If it's a Republican or whether it's a Democrat, it'll be a Democrat or Republican of the Sandhills and not of Charlotte or Cabarrus County. The people in the Sandhills, they're tired of being split as population fodder for other districts. So that is why that was done. So now having, also, forgot to mention, we also have communities of interest with Harnett County. As you're leaving Spring Lake on 211, heading into Harnett County, you'll see a large presence of military families. As a matter of fact, they even have military housing up there in that area. A lot of military move into the houses up there, and the businesses cater to veterans, active duty, retirees, so there's a significant community of interest attached to Harnett County as well. So now having established that 7 and that 4 as numbered there, essentially I have the makings for 6. But there's not sufficient population. So, of course, there's only one other place to go at this time, and it's into Johnson County. So I move east and grab sufficient population to build out the district. Now, in one of my earlier versions of the map, I had Johnston County connected to the coastal district, and I had Onslow County split, with a portion being with the coastal and a portion with the southeast. Some folks didn't necessarily like that. One commented that Onslow County should be kept whole because of the military presence there that essentially permeated the entire environment of the county. So I honored that, and I made Onslow County whole and kept it up in the east. And then some prefer the Johnson County, if it's going to be connected to another region, that stay as it was, which was the southeast region. So I did that. Had to make adjustments to Wayne County in order to rebalance the population, and then you have 3 and 1, as you see from there. Okay. So I guess there leaves only one other district to talk about, and that's that Voting Rights Act district. And early on, we asked our members to say, well, we're going to need to use racial data in order to make sure that we comply with the VRA with regarding to the districts we draw. And they didn't want to do that, and that's their prerogative. So since I couldn't use racial data as my guide, I relied on a 2011 drawing generated by this body, the Senate, that has the VRA requirements for the Senate districts that were being contemplated at the time. And essentially what they did is they identified areas that were considered to have significant racial polarization when it came to voting. So I said, well, if I keep most of the counties reflected in this document produced by the North Carolina Senate in 2011, and I try to keep most of the counties that were in our current plan, I probably have a chance of hopefully making sure I comply with VRA requirements with regard to maintaining that district. So that's what I did. Remember I said I constrained it to Gannville County, and we have what we have. Now, we've heard some talk about different types of data that come into play here. Oops, back up. Erica, I've done it again.
Doesn't like that backup button.
Yeah, the backup kicks me out for whatever reason. If I go too far, don't go anywhere. Okay. Oh, where's forward? Hit me forward. To the next slide forward. I think I keep hitting something wrong, don't I? Next one. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we've talked about splits before. There are splits, and then there are splits. In this plan I have before you, 13 counties are split. And the Republican plan that was presented to us, 11 counties are split. The reason that is because in that plan they chose to split counties more than one time. And as I indicated to Sorry. The reason they did that was because they chose to split counties more than one time, which I chose not to do deliberately. Because in my most humble opinion, when a split counties more than one time, that is a clear indication of an intent to gerrymander. But one thing also that was not mentioned is that that also results in a different number of county splits. So in the plan before you now, I mean the number of times the county was split. Before you now, counties were split only 13 times, whereas in the other plan, because of all this double splitting, counties were split a total 14 times. For what that's worth. Just to bring a little bit of transparency to that situation. We talked about municipal splits. Okay. Total number of splits, and the plan I have is 41, the total number, and the plan presented by my friends across the House, 13. Now, altogether, we have 553 municipalities in the state of North Carolina. But as Senator Heiss informed us, all splits are not the same. There's a kind of split, I call it a phantom split. I think Senator Heiss called it a zero split. So really, they don't count. Because what happens is split, one side of the split doesn't have any population in it, so it doesn't matter. Then also Senator Heiss mentioned about what I call the cross-county splits, when you have a municipality that goes across the counties and therefore is split by virtue of the fact that you don't necessarily combine those counties. Had 19 of those, and by my count, they had 20, about the same. Now, the big difference here is in the intra-county splits. Clearly, our friends made a very concerted effort not to split those types of municipalities, and they only had 2. I think they were in the major cities like Charlotte, if I recall correctly, and one other county they mentioned. Now, of course, each of those splits will be associated with different populations. And of the 13, mine, the majority of the 3 came from the same 2 as they have here, as well as in Pitt County with the splitting of Greenville. Now, the reason I didn't split Greenville is because I felt I did not want to move too far away from the precedent that had been established in the setting of the VRA district in Congressional District 1 up there. As I look back on all the maps, there's a split there, and I assume it's there for a purpose. Yeah. And I can remember a former senator that was here when I first arrived. He said he would walk up to a fence post and it's tied together with baling wire. You better think twice before you remove that wire, Senator Nesbitt. So I figured I probably should leave well enough alone and not do too much of messing around in Pitt County. And also VTD splits. We talked about that briefly. And the plan before you, there are 14 VTD splits. 1 in most counties that have them, and 2 in 1. It happens to be Iredell County. If I had time, I could probably go back and fix that, but right now they're 2. And the plan presented by our Republican friends across the aisle there, they only have, they have 24. And I suspect the number's a little bit higher, probably due to their efforts to avoid splitting municipalities. So like you have to pick your poison. Split more municipalities or split more VTDs. Sometimes you just have to pick the poison. It depends on what sort of priority you establish. But, of course, we didn't establish any priorities in the committee here. What we did is we said we were going to harmonize. My good friend, the chairman, said we're going to harmonize the criteria. Well, folks, hopefully I've harmonized well enough, and hopefully you'll consider this bill for adoption. Any questions?
Thank you, Senator Clark. Any questions or comments, Senator Blue?
I do have a question of Senator Colonel Clark. Since you mentioned the military, it might be that, and you do because you live in it, but as you created the Sand Hill District, it might be that folk don't fully understand or appreciate the impact that the military presence at Fort Bragg has in all of those counties, particularly Robeson County, and the residents in Robeson County who go to Fort Bragg every morning but as importantly, the civilian workforce that base, the biggest in the country, and I think probably one of the biggest in the world, how it pulls on that whole region and ties together the whole region. And as well as Harnett County, because even though it's adjacent to Wake County, sandwiched between Cumberland and Wake County, a significant portion of its population and its housing pattern and industry is predicated on what's happening at Fort Bragg. And I'm wondering, in addition to the things that you pointed out, since you know you work on the base and you do analysis, since you know the different impacts that 50, 60,000 troop base has in that area, are there other things that sort of factored in to your decision that may have been related to Fort Bragg or Pope Airfield, now they call it, rather than Pope Air Force Base, that sort of informed you as to how this was probably the greatest community of interest in the whole state that hadn't been recognized?
That's true, Senator Blue. And you mentioned Harnett County, so we'll start there. Right on the northern border of Cumberland County, right north of the installation. If you go stand out there on 211 in the morning to watch folks come into that post, the cars will just come. They keep coming and coming and coming. You don't see much traffic going in the other direction in the morning. But you go stand at that same spot in the afternoon when folks get off from work, and you just see the cars rolling out, 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 and out. And it's a similar thing in Hoke County. As a matter of fact, in Hoke County, about 35% of the folks in Hoke County travel over to Cumberland County for work. That's the largest percentage of members in a given county traveling to another county for work in the state. And most of that is tied to the economic driver in the region known as Fort Bragg. Senator Blue talked about Robinson County, where he's from. You have the same thing coming up 95. As a matter of fact, one of my coworkers, retired about a couple of years ago, came all the way from Fairmont down in Robinson County. And he wasn't alone. I have a lot of folks from Robinson County coming up to Cumberland County to work. And like I already talked about Camp McCall, the same thing in Southern Pines, lower portion, of Moore County. They have communities that formally establish their connection to the post. You can go to their websites. They're military veteran friendly. So that really is a giant region that represents one giant ball of common interest. And additionally, even things not related to that, there's a cultural dimension too. I don't have the racial data or political data, whatever. Just common knowledge of the geography of the state, as Senator Blue indicated. But 4 of those counties that form the belt of that region are majority minority counties. And of course, they wonder why it is that they keep getting split like that. And in this plan before us here, that it is just completely intolerable. Not the one before us here, the one that was presented. From that region, it splits off Hoke County in one direction. It takes Hoke County, Scotland in another direction, and Robinson County in a whole another direction, a 3-part split. No one, absolutely no one in that region supports that notion. And as I indicated before, if you were there present at the Cumberland County hearing, and even if you weren't present and you want the transcript, I've had my LA produce a written transcript for you so you can read what the 20 people who spoke, plus 20 plus people spoke at that hearing had to say. Even the chairman, former chairman of the Republican Party in Cumberland County spoke in favor of that construct that we have here. She said she had been there for I forgot how many years and seen I don't know how many different configurations of congressional districts coming down into the Sand Hills. And it's a shame. It's a shame. Had a retired Army general, General Anderson, who spoke, spoke to the commonality of the community of interest related to military interests there, Senator Blue. Had folks from Robeson County, Hope County, who came over in favor of that construct that is in this map here. They're tired of being sliced, diced, and split up. They believe they deserve the same as every other major geocultural region in the state. And I just happen to agree with them.
Senator Blue.
One last
Yes.
Then I'll
comment.
have Senator Newton and Senator Nichol.
Okay.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
One last comment that I would point out to Colonel Clark is that there was an interesting article in the local news this weekend, and it may have been in either yesterday or today's newspaper, about a powwow that occurred at the new Dix Park here. And it involved the 8 recognized Native American tribes in North Carolina. And in that cluster of counties that you have in the Sandhills, and I know it because I lived there and grew up with it, but in those 4 counties, Robeson, Cumberland, Hoke, and Scotland, are contained probably 90% of the Lumbee tribe that still live in North Carolina. A good number are here and in Charlotte, the remainders. Mecklenburg and Wake, the remainder. And they constitute the biggest Native American or indigenous tribe east of the Mississippi River. And then you look at the other tribes, and all of them are cultural preservation and those kinds of issues that are important to people who live there and people who study them and people who understand what cultural connections really mean, and they've been talking about it lately. And that would be a further reason to seriously look at a congressional district, because the biggest challenge to them now is not only recognition, but status. It is a tribe that got recognized in 1957 as an Indian or Native American tribe, but they don't have status like the other recognized Indian tribes in Oklahoma, the Cherokee, and various others. So that's been in the debate a long time. And so there are many other reasons, but I just wanted to commend you on basically popping the ball up in the air to discuss the lack of an organizing cluster in those counties as the other sections of the state have, especially with respect to the Sandhills district, but also on showing that you can draw a VRA district simply by knowing what VRA means and what the historical nature of those black belt counties along the top of North Carolina is, and the history associated with it, and how that is the way that North Carolina got into discussion about the Voting Rights Act in the first place. So recognizing that you can draw that district at a way that's that is valid without having the specifics of the population in a precinct or the population in a VRA, but simply knowing those counties and knowing what the population is going to add up to. So if you know how to use them to create the population necessary, you certainly know how to use them to destroy the population necessary for the preservation of a VRA district.
Senator Newton, thank you for your comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions, if I could, for Senator Clark. Senator Clark, in your explanation of your map, you talked about objectives, and you talked about VRA district. You talked a little bit about a fair number of seats being an objective. So I just wanted to confirm that as you worked through your map and developed your map, you did not consider either partisan considerations or racial considerations.
Senator Clark.
Thank you for the question. Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, Senator Newton, if I wanted to be a partisan, I certainly have it within my abilities to create a Democratic partisan gerrymander. I chose not to.
Senator Newton.
Thank you. I do have a follow-up. When you ran your amendment, obviously we paused. We took a look, and there's a miscount here in terms of the intra-county city or municipal splits. And what I would like to do, I counted 17 splits that do not exist in the Senate map. So 17 additional municipalities are split under your map that do not exist in the Senate map by my count. But you said there were 13 additional splits. So what I'd like to do is go through the list that I have, and maybe you can correct me and tell me which of these municipalities, in fact, are not split.
I'm not going to be able to do that unless we sit down together with the maps themselves and with the reports generated by the staff. Certainly, I can't sit here up at this podium and figure that out, so you may as well save your
Okay.
time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
But I'm more than willing to
Follow up.
meet with you and go.
Senator Newton's recognized.
Okay, well, for purposes of members of the public that are listening, committee members who are, know the criteria, know that it was our goal not to split municipalities, I'm going to list what I have as 17 additional municipalities that are split in your map. Cary is split, but in each one of these, they're kept whole in the Senate map. Chapel Hill is split. Clayton is split. Dunn is split. Durham is split. Fuquay-Varina is split. Greenville is split. Harrisburg is split. Holly Springs is split. Lillington is split. Mooresville is split. Mount Olive is split. Mount Pleasant is split. Raleigh is split. Winston-Salem is split. And
What
I
about
think that's
Dunn?
it. That's it.
Well, you forgot Dunn.
Oh, Dunn. Yeah, I did miss Dunn, sorry.
And can I respond to that, Mr. Chair?
You may respond to the question.
And one thing we need to understand also, that all splits are not equal. The Dunn split essentially splits off one person. It's in an adjoining VTD. So I had the decision to make, well, do I go split another VTD in order to keep from splitting a municipality, or do I just leave it as is? One person. I chose to just leave it as is. And as a matter of fact, like I said, all splits are not the same. Some splits involve very little population, some involved a lot. And I appreciate the fact that my friends across the aisle made that one of their top priorities, not splitting municipalities. That was not one of my top priorities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Newton. Senator Nichol.
I think this is a good committee discussion, but once all the debate is finished, I'll have a motion on this map. For the committee, there are, I think, two things I just want to share that give me nightmares. Number one, it's being on the floor of the Senate and having Senator Heiss table my amendments. I think that's probably happened more than any other senator since I've been here. And number two, it's being unprepared in front of Judge Fitch in his courtroom. There are some judges you just don't mess with, and if you don't have your facts and you lie to them, they get really upset. And to say that the map that we just passed is a fair map and not an extreme partisan gerrymander is just laughable. And so I would just say to the committee, if you're going to say that, judges get pretty upset, and judges like Judge Fitch, they let you know about it. But my question for Senator Clark is twofold. Number one, there are a lot of outside groups who have scored these maps. I'd like to know what they scored the map that we just passed and the version of your map that they scored with a letter grade, A through F. And then also, would you define extreme partisan gerrymandering as a map that guarantees election to 71 to 79% of seats from one political party?
Thank you, Senator Wiley. First of all, unfortunately, we were unable to determine the performance of maps that we had completed within this committee because we chose not to use the partisan data for the purposes of evaluation. I agree and understand that they did not want to use it in the construction process. However, we all did understand that there were going to be nonprofit entities out there rating these maps. And yes, the Princeton Gerrymandering Group and the 538 Group were among those. And they rated the Clark 7-7 maps, as people refer to them, as A's in every circumstance. And like I said, I didn't seek out with an objective of making a proportional map. But what the map proves, based on what those entities have said, is that it is in fact a proportional map that provides, or likely will provide, proportional representation. And I say that again, recognizing that our U.S. Constitution doesn't require that. Our state constitution does not require that. However, it could be an objective of this body, but it is not. But clearly for the common folks out there like myself and Senator Lowe, our idea of fairness is that if you have 7 in the west, you ought to have 7 in the east. If you're going to have one in every other major geocultural region, you ought to have one in the Sandhills too. Then what was that other question, Senator Nichol?
How do you define extreme
Oh,
partisan
extreme
gerrymandering?
partisan gerrymandering, okay. Well, people have their own definitions of this way, but I like to use the construct put forward to us by the mathematicians, and they use what's called an ensemble analysis. So they use their mathematical wizardry to generate hundreds of thousands of maps maybe. And they take these maps that we've created and they establish a distribution, and they see where these maps we've created fall within that span. Now, if you're somewhere in the central tendency in that process, they say that's probably not gerrymandering. But if somehow or another your map shows up on the tail end of that distribution, you have an indication that something might be awry there, and that it may not be consistent what might happen in a natural order. In other words, what might happen if we did things like in a 7-7 way. If we did things in a way which every major geocultural region had a congressional district embedded in it. You know, it's not likely that such a map is going to show up at the tail ends of those distributions. My guess, and it's only guess because I'm not a mathematician and I don't personally know how to do it, but if you were to compare the 7-7 map and a distribution such as that, it would likely fall in the central tendency, is my guess. Because there's been this grand myth out there that we can't draw a fair map in North Carolina that will provide proportional representation because, as we've heard before, because all the Democrats live in the cities. Well, I think the 7-7 throws that notion out of the window completely. Reveals that statement for what it is. So when you have a map that purportedly, I don't know, I'm not a smart guy, I can't do that kind of analysis, but purportedly will generate a seat distribution along the lines of 10 Republicans and 4 Democrats on the good day, and the one, according to 538 Princeton gerrymandering groups, that might generate a, I don't know, but maybe 7-7 or maybe 8-6 or something like that. I think when you compare those two in terms of seat distribution, one certainly would likely lie at extremes, and people would call that partisan gerrymandering, Senator Nichol. Hope that answers your question.
Senator Marcus.
Thank you. Senator Clark, since you're from the Sandhills and I am not, I would like you to provide your belief to this committee about whether any part of Mecklenburg County has ever been considered to be part of the Sandhills region.
I'm glad you asked that, Senator Marcus. At the public hearing that took place down in Robeson County, there was a lady there who lived in Mecklenburg County. I mean, excuse me, not Mecklenburg County. Yeah, it was Mecklenburg County. That's correct, Mecklenburg County. And she now lives in Robeson County. And you know what she told us, Senator Marcus? She said that when she was in Mecklenburg County, she was in a particular congressional district. And she found her way all the way to Robeson County in her new home, and lo and behold, she was still in the same congressional district. It's like, what in the world? How in the world, she thought, could I still be in the same congressional district? Mecklenburg County has absolutely nothing in common with the folks out there in Robeson County. It's two completely different worlds. It makes absolutely no sense. And in our current congressional districting plan, it does not need to be that way. You could have two compact districts there. And it certainly does not need to be there again in the proposed congressional districting plan. Thanks, Senator Marcus.
Thank you. Sen-
One additional question, if I could, Mr. Chair.
Final follow-up.
Senator Clark, have you had an opportunity to compare compactness scores that's one of the criteria that this committee adopted, and we haven't really talked about compactness scores. I don't know if you've analyzed your map as compared to the map we already passed out, the Republican version map, and if so, could you share that information?
Thank you, Senator Marcus. When it comes to the compactness scores, I had to take the Senator Lowe approach. I assume he probably shares my approach. What do the common people see when they look at that map, the regular folks out there? We could stand up here and talk about Posby Popper, REOC, cut edges, whole convection, whatever. About 30 different doggone compactness scores available in Maptitude. But of course, the committee said you may consult those. It didn't say you had to. And even with regard to the Posby Popper and REOC, we didn't set a limit on what value would be considered good. Sometimes Posby Popper gives a better reading than the REOC. Sometimes they give the same reading. As a matter of fact, as a trivia question, what geographic figure would give the same reading on a Posby Popper and a REOC score? A circle. Thank you, Senator Marcus. A circle there, both give the value 1. Because when we talk about the REOC, essentially what we're doing is dividing the area of the district by the minimum circumscribing circle. And when we do the Posby Popper, it's going to be the area of the district dividing by a circle of equal perimeter. But when you start talking stuff like that to our folks back at home, what are you talking about? Man, look at that. Did you see my map? Where's my map at? Well, you have a picture of it. Now, that's a pretty map. Now, ain't it? You have to admit it. I know you're not going to admit it, but that's a pretty map. And folks at home look at that and they say, he did a good job on that map. And I know it's true because they told me so. It's a pretty map. Nothing looks jerked up or jacked up in that thing. And even to the extent it does, if it does, there's a rationale behind it that they understand why it is the way it is. And I've gone through great pains to try to explain to them why the map is the way it is. What was my thinking behind doing that map? And to the credit of Senator Blue and the attorneys out there, they let me up here to just speak my mind. They didn't try to tell me how to do the map. They didn't say, well, preserve a district for so-and-so or for this person or that person. Just do the map. That's what I did. Senator Heiss.
Members, I would just say the REOC and Posby Popper scores are part of your stat pack that you've received for each of the districts that were attached to the map.
So if you want to take a look at those numbers, have at it. And come back to me and tell me what they mean.
Senator Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to make a comment. So I know, Senator Clark has referred to Senator Lowe quite a bit in his remarks, and I know in the previous bill, Senator Lowe indicated that his county of Forsyth was grouped with Lincoln County in the previous map, and well, in this map, Forsyth County is split in half. In fact, Winston-Salem is split almost 50-50 down the middle. It's actually 55-45. But this district traverses all the way to Polk County. And so if you just, we've talked about travel times and so forth. So, from Winston-Salem to the county seat of Lincoln County, which is Lincolnton, it's a 90-minute drive. If you do the travel time from Winston-Salem to the county seat of Polk County, which is Columbus, that's a 2.5-hour drive. So I'm not sure Senator Lowe, based on his criteria he stated earlier, should be necessarily happy with this map more than the previous map. He can speak for himself, of course.
I certainly will.
But that's the reality of this map. Splits multiple, and Colonel Clark said that splits aren't all equal. Well, that's true. Of course, the Senate map only splits 2 municipalities in the state. Well, this one splits Charlotte 66-34, Clayton 84-16, Durham 83-17, Greenville 54-46, Harrisburg 73-27, Mooresville 64-36, and Winston 55-45. So there's quite a number of major municipal splits. So it's interesting that, sometimes we hear the opposing party saying, well, all of us should be all represented by one congressman. But then they embrace, well, it's okay if we split all these into 2 congressional districts. So I just kind of wanted to note the inconsistency in the arguments that we hear sometimes in this committee.
Mr. Chair, I'd
Senator
like to
Edwards.
respond.
I don't believe there was a question. I believe it was a comment.
I'd like to comment, Mr. Chair.
I'll get to you in just a second. Senator
Okay.
Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I ask, I'd like to ask Senator Clark if he has an overlay of the maps that he started out with in his presentation to the congressional or to CGC 7, meaning that the presentation started with some very compelling maps that had population concentration, prosperity zones, and that sort of thing. I'd just like to know, is there an overlay available for us onto this map so that I could see the commonalities?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The slides that I have used are for the public records, and you have complete access to them, if that's what you need.
Mr. Chair, do I take that as a no? There's not an overlay?
The
for
committee
us.
does not have anything submitted that would
Okay.
be an overlay.
Thank-
I don't know if they could create them, but we
All
don't
right.
have that.
Thank you. If I might be allowed to make just a few comments then.
Recognized for comments.
When Senator Clark began the conversation in presenting those maps, I saw some slides, some data that really caught my attention. And I thought, okay, this is his basis. Maybe we're going somewhere here. But the more that I reflect back on how I remember those slides to indicate those various areas, prosperity zones established by Governor McCrory and population and such. And in my mind, I try to overlay those to this map. There's absolutely no comparison whatsoever. And so I'm not sure that there's any relevance to those bases to this map. My next thought is that I continue to hear this conversation about third parties scoring maps. Every indication that I've seen in every one of those situations, partisan information has been used, and that's one of the criteria that this committee clearly said that we did not want to use. And to me, as a member of this committee, I believe that our responsibility and our definition of fair should be, did we draw these maps according to the criteria that the committee set out? Not necessarily some group from Princeton or someplace else. Did we follow our criteria? And then the last point that I'd like to make is, while I heard Senator Newton ask the question of Senator Clark, was racial data used? And I thought that I heard the answer to that as being no. Well, I'm not a lawyer either. I'm just a common citizen legislator. But when I hear that consideration was given to not only VRA districts that are based off of racial data, but there was consideration given to VR districts that are 10 years old, which I think would be totally irrelevant. The reason we're drawing maps now is that constitutionally we're asked to draw maps after every census. And so I believe that while obviously there was some racial consideration in that thought, it's too old to be valid. And then the last thing that I said that was the last. One more really. I was part of the map drawing process in the fall of 2019 when the court ordered us to redraw maps. And I remember vividly that one of the key criteria that we used then was to not split municipalities. And I hear Senator Clark saying, well, Dunn is only It's only one person also, it's okay. But then I hear Senator Daniel go through a list of other significant splits that really worries me that we would set, if we were to set ourselves up with that criteria to the court orders in 2019, we would have failed miserably. And so I have a real concern with this map from that perspective as well. Thank you, committee. I appreciate you indulging me.
Thank you for your comments. Next, Senator Lowe, I believe, wanted to speak. Senator Lowe's not want to speak. Senator Clark.
I'd like to respond. There are a lot of statements made, so I may miss a few, so I'll start with the most recent regarding the criteria on municipal splits. And the criteria we adopted this time, it said municipalities may be considered. It did not say we shall not split municipalities. When the members, my Democratic fellows, asked for a priority of the committee in terms of splits, we were told there was none. You also mentioned earlier about the prosperity zones not matching up with exactly with the map I have here for consideration. Well, of course not. First of all, there are fewer prosperity zones, and also the prosperity zones are not population balanced. What I said is it served as an input for me in terms of how districts might potentially be grouped. And I forgot the other two things you said and what Senator Daniels has said, so it's hard for me to respond. If they really want an answer, just wanted to be heard, well, that's fine, but if you want an answer to the comment, I'm more than willing to hear the statement again and respond to it appropriately. Oh, he did mention something that my criteria or something I'd done may not sit well with Senator Lowe. But with all due respect to Senator Lowe, we get along quite well. But he didn't draw my map. I drew that for the betterment of the citizens as I saw it in the state of North Carolina. And if I caused some offense there, forgive me. But as we all know, there are compromises that have to be made in this process. Sometimes you may have to split a municipality that you don't want to. Sometimes you may have to split a VTD that you don't want to. Sometimes you have to mess up your pretty map in order to balance the population. Stuff happens. It's at the same time, it's an easy process, but a complicated one, trying to do the right thing. And that's all I tried to do. I tried to do a map that the citizens would look at, and they would say, not just this committee, but they, the folks out there watching this on TV today, they would say that this is a good map.
Senator Nichol, you had been asked earlier to be recognized for a motion.
We're finished?
I have no additional speakers that have asked to speak.
Move for a favorable report.
There's a motion on the floor for a favorable report for, let's see, this is Senate Bill 737. As amended, we'll go with rolled into a original PCS unfavorable, rolled into a new PCS unfavorable as to the original bill. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? No. The noes have it. Does not receive a favorable report. Senator Daniels,
A motion, Mr. Chair.
you recognize for a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would move that Senate Bill 737 as amended receive an unfavorable report from the committee.
There's a motion on the floor from Senator Daniels, Senate Bill 737 receive an unfavorable report to the bill as amended, also unfavorable to the original bill. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no?
No.
The ayes have it. Senate Bill 737 will be reported unfavorably.
Senator Hyde, for reporting purposes, do we still need to embrace the amendment so that it will be reported out with an unfavorable?
Senate Bill 738, Senator Chaudhry. And I think we'll go ahead and have staff begin the process of passing this out. Oh, yeah, it was passed out. Would you prefer? Lowe just said he would. Would you prefer to break for lunch or? Okay. Does every member have a copy of Senate Bill 738, first edition? I do not believe there's an amendment to this, so. All right, I think everybody's got it. Senator Chaudhry?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if it's necessary to put my map on the screen or not for members of the public, but let me say from the outset, we've had a lot of folks talk about being citizen legislators, becoming country folks. I'm just a lawyer, Mr. Chair, and I feel like I'm a caveman lawyer this afternoon. I'm just a caveman lawyer, and your world frightens and confuses me, to quote Saturday Night Live. So what I thought I would do is walk through the map that I've drafted and provide an explanation similar to Senator Daniel. And then I'll also comment on the objectives. I think one of the things that you will see with this map is actually quite similar to Senator Clark's map. So I say that hopefully in order to avoid duplicative questions and move us along schedule. So on the far east, you will see Senate District 3. That is a Senate district primarily comprised of the coastal counties. And as we move towards the west, you'll see Senate District 1 that runs from Granville County to Pasquotank County. As indicated by Senator Clark, if you do look at the 2011 data that he had revealed, this could potentially be a VRA district that I believe would also answer some of the questions and concerns expressed by committee members with regard to the fact that under the Stevenson Supreme Court decision, there needs to be compliance with VRA first before drawing the remainder of the districts. Next, I'm going to move to Congressional District 2, which is a primarily downtown Northern Wake district. I think it's important for purposes as we've discussed here and has been highlighted by Senator Clark that Wake County District has only been split twice and not 3 times compared to the Heiss-Daniel map. I will then move to Congressional District 13. You will see in this congressional district as an example in comparison to the Heiss-Daniel map, this actually keeps together all of southern Wake County. It also puts Cary and Morrisville together, which I know is one of the comments that we heard during public comments, and then extends to Chatham, Lee, and Harnett County, which I believe are natural extensions of the triangle and also share part of the economic development and recruitment as a region. From there, we move to Congressional District 7, which runs from Johnson County all the way down to Brunswick and New Hanover County. This is essentially what would be called a southeastern North Carolina district. Then we move to Congressional District 14. This is a variation of the Sandhills district. I think a couple of points to reiterate for this district. One is I think the linkage between Hoke and Cumberland County is critical when we talk about the military community of interest. In addition, I think as a question was posed by Senator Blue, it is hard to design and create a Cumberland County district. It's hard to draw a Cumberland Sandhills district without including Cumberland County in it. We then move to, I'm going to move up north to Congressional District 4. This runs from part of Rockingham County to Person, then runs down to Alamance and Durham County. Again, these counties have actually been clustered as state legislative districts for a number of years and also share a lot of regional cooperation, including mental health cooperation. Also, it's important to note that I-85 runs through this district as well. Then we come to Congressional District 6. This combines part of Forsyth and Guilford County. I think this clearly illustrates a triad congressional county, again, similar to what Senator Clark mentioned, and also important in highlighting that these communities of interest stayed together. As you'll notice, Forsyth County here is not divided twice, but only once. And then we come to Congressional District 8, which runs from part of Iredell County to the east of Randolph County. And then we come down to, I'm coming down to Congressional District 12, which is the Mecklenburg County District. As the criteria states, you should begin by splitting the county once, if possible. And so here we have Congressional District 12, which runs from the southwestern part of Mecklenburg County all the way to the north. And then we've created a Congressional District 9. Again, this is the eastern part of Mecklenburg County that includes Union and Stanley County, which I think are a natural part of the growth that we are seeing in Mecklenburg County. We then come to Congressional District 10, which runs from Iredell to Rutherford County. Congressional District 5, which is essentially the northwestern district running from Avery to Rockingham County. And then lastly, Congressional District 11, which is the western North Carolina district as well. This district, some of these districts, I should say, towards the end actually somewhat come close to the districts that have been presented by Senator Heiss and Daniel. Let me make a few other comments for I'm happy to take questions after that. So as I mentioned, the criteria that was mentioned, that was agreed upon by the committee, stated that voting districts shall be split only when necessary. And in this instance, and I think this warrants a discussion if we want to revisit this, in these instances, the districts are only split up into 14 voting districts compared to 24, I believe, in the districts shared by Senator Daniel and Senator Heiss. Secondly, I've made a reasonable effort to draw districts that are compact. And while Senator Clark wasn't willing to share his REAC Polsby Popper scores, I can tell you that the average scores for this were 0.45 and 0.36, and those compact scores are certainly worth, I think, discussing in comparison and contrast to the maps that were shared by Senator Daniel and Heiss. And then finally, I should say that, or I should also say that this map attempts to consider member residents, and similar to Senator Clark's map, really avoids any double bunking that takes place. And finally, I should mention that with regard to communities' interest, again, it's important to highlight the preservation of the Sandhills area and the fact that the three largest counties, Wake County, Guilford County, and Mecklenburg County, are only split once. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Chaudhry. I will add that the previous map discussed was sponsored by myself, Senator Daniels, and Senator Newton. Those are coming in, just to make sure that's not left out. And speaking of which, Senator Newton, I believe, has some questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Senator Chaudhry, you identified certain communities of interest. Do you consider municipalities to be communities of interest?
Senator Newton, I'm happy to answer that question. Yes, I would consider municipalities to be communities of interest, but I would also consider voting districts to be communities of interest, and I would also consider counties to be of communities of interest. And I think to Senator Clark's point, it is difficult to identify what the priorities were for the criteria that was set out. And so I think as we discussed, there seems to be a clear trade-off between the splitting of counties versus the splitting of municipalities.
Thank you. Follow-up?
Yes.
So I have a list of the municipalities that your map splits. It's actually two more than Senator Clark's map split. I'm going to list these. Would you tell me if I'm in error with any of these municipalities? I've got your map splitting Cary, Charlotte, Clayton, Concord, Durham, Eden, Elizabethtown, Eureka, Fuquay-Varina, Glen Alpine, Goldsboro, Greenville, Holly Springs, Morganton, Mount Pleasant, Raleigh, Troutman, Wentworth, and Winston-Salem. Is that a correct list of your municipal splits?
How many splits are those, Senator Newton?
19.
I didn't know if it was 19 splits, but I thought it was 14. But regardless, that if the municipal splits are your count, I'll accept your word for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, may I just respond briefly?
Senator, you're recognized for comments. I don't know if anybody.
Again, I think it's important to point out again that there was no priority identified with the municipal splits. And Senator Newton, while you've identified some of the splits that have taken place with the municipalities that you've identified, I would tell you I'm happy to work with you to remedy the splits for those municipalities, provided that we can continue to protect and preserve the county splits. As I mentioned, and I think has been mentioned here a number of times today in this committee meeting, we're also seeing large county splits done twice in the three largest counties here in the state.
Senator Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Choder, you just started to touch on an issue that matters to me a lot from Mecklenburg County. If you could please, for us, compare how your map compares to Senator Heiss and Senator Daniels' map on various criteria, but
And Senator
specifically, and Senator Newton. As long as we don't call it the Senate map, which a few of you have been calling it, as far as I know, there is no Senate map yet. If you, specifically when it comes to slicing and dicing the major or the large counties like Mecklenburg, Guilford, and Wake.
Sure, Senator Marcus, I'm happy to provide to you some comparisons and contrasts. Is that your question about comparing and contrasting?
Yes, that one specific criteria is important, is important to me, but there are many criteria, so I'd like to hear them all and hear your comparison between the two maps.
So, I think to be clear, the map was not designed or drawn using partisan data, but as we now know, based on third-party analysis, there have been public reports that have compared and contrast the different maps that have been published. And so, let me start by first discussing the Princeton gerrymandering project. During the public comment period, we repeatedly heard that the Princeton gerrymandering project gave the map that was drawn by Senator Heiss and Senator Daniel a fairness grade of F, or what's described as a significant Republican partisan advantage. The gerrymandering project further points out that their map receives a partisan fairness grade. It gives the Republicans a partisan advantage of 21.4%. The map that I've presented, and I believe Senator Clark's map was similar, gets a fairness grade of A and gives no partisan advantage to either party. And in fact, the partisan advantage is actually 0% compared to a 21.4% Republican advantage under Senator Heiss's map. Second, Senator Marcus, I would point out that the analysis carried out by 538, there were a few takeaways based on this. One is that Senator Heiss's map would produce 3 Democratic-leaning seats, 10 Republican-leaning seats, and 1 highly competitive seat. In contrast, this map would produce 4 Democratic-leaning seats, 6 Republican-leaning seats, and 4 highly competitive seats. And then secondly, there is a so-called efficiency gap, and this is the idea that there's a difference between each party's share of wasted votes. The efficiency gap that's been scored for the Heiss-Daniel map was 21.1% favoring Republicans. Generally, an efficiency gap score over 8% is a red flag. The map that I present here before you has an efficiency score of 5.8%, but still favoring Republicans. And then lastly, an analysis from our nonpartisan staff found a compactness score, as I mentioned, a REAC score of 0.42 compared to Senator Heiss's, Daniel's REAC score of ours was 0.45, and the REAC score for Senator Heiss was 0.42, and our Paulsby-Popper score was 0.364 versus the Heiss-Daniel-Paulsby-Popper score of 0.30. And while we've discussed the splitting municipalities, I should point out that this map splits only 14 voter districts compared to 24 voting districts by the Heiss-Daniel map.
Follow-up?
Follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 follow-ups. Could you explain what makes a REAC or Paulsby-Popper score better? In other words, what do those mean? And then second, could you explain what a wasted vote is?
Yep. So, I think as Senator Clark mentioned, a Polsby-Popper-Rioch score is basically an indicator of compactness. The closer you get to 1, the more ideal the compact score is there. And so as we look at the higher score will be a general indicator of what is more compact in that instance. And with regard to wasted votes is a measure in determining basically how many voters that would go to the poll would essentially not have their votes counted because of the districts being skewed towards having one partisan advantage or the other. And as I mentioned, the efficiency score is indicated by the 538 site points out that the Heist-Daniel map had a wasted score vote of 20.1% favoring Republicans. Generally, the red flag for an efficiency gap score is over 8%.
Comment, please.
Recognized for a comment.
That last thing that you mentioned, Senator Chaudhary, we haven't talked about enough, in my opinion, the idea of wasted votes, because that, to me, matters to voters. I know you've all heard, I've heard people say, I don't vote because my vote doesn't count. I feel like it doesn't matter. My district's already decided which party it's going to go for before I go. And so that efficiency gap really goes to one of the major things this committee should be thinking about. And if we want to waste that high number of votes in order to get the Republican submitted map here, I'd say that that's very undemocratic.
Senator Blue.
A question of Senator Chaudhary.
Yes.
I heard some issues raised about various things, some questions about your map. Do you think it would make sense to withdraw it and let us look at some of those observations? And if you're willing to do that, perhaps we can see what folk have had time to analyze and determine whether those are actually flaws in your map.
Mr. Chair? Yes, Senator Blue, I'd be more than happy to withdraw my map at the current time so that we can re-examine some of the concerns raised by this committee.
We'll let the committee stand at recess for just a minute. Thank you, members of the committee. After consultation with the chairs as well as with Senator Blue, the chairman will withdraw Senate Bill 738 from today's calendar and for consideration in front of the committee. So having nothing else existing on the agenda, this committee will stand adjourned.